Hi, everyone. So thank you for joining today and making the time to listen to us. Hopefully it will be worth your while. So my name is Esmeralda Robinson, and I work for a company called Mosaic Island. We are mainly in the business of digital business transformation, but we also help some of our clients with their tooling requirements. Vodafone is one of those clients. And then we were originally asked to talk about how we implemented APM for them at the EA Global Summit in Munich earlier this year. Now, unfortunately, Rishen, who will be joining me today, wasn't available for that session, but he is here now. So I'll hand over to him to give his own introduction.
Thank you, Esmeralda. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. My name is Rishen Bhownath from Vodafone IoT. I am a lead enterprise architect within the organization, focusing on IoT end-to-end application landscape. I provide business, technology, and architecture guidance spanning multiple domains and cross-functional teams. To help me maintain a view of applications, I require an application portfolio management tool to keep track of KPI and application information and provide various perspectives on our application landscape. So for today, I'd like to share my experiences with APM and Sparx, our need for it, and how Sparx and Mosaic Island deliver this for us. Okay. Sparx enabled us to provide an inventory view of applications with a number of reporting and KPI tracking functionality. So to provide you with a little bit of history of our APM journey, we were in a position where we needed to pivot quite quickly to a new APM solution that was flexible, cost-effective, and rich in functionality to fulfill our use cases. So we turned to Sparx to provide us with that solution. We had implemented Sparx already to provide our solution architects with modeling features, but we had not used the APM Prolaborate capabilities. So what we did was there were a few use cases that we identified and we were interested in. One of them was a view of security data for our cybersecurity audits, reporting, and inventory, to create a comprehensive list of applications, including their dependencies, information, and relationships, etc. We needed to maintain various domain application owner information along with an app map hierarchy view. We also needed views to manage and report on the complete application lifecycle, including decommissioning. So a view of when applications will be planned to be phased in and phased out to enable tracking of our key KPIs. Next slide, please. So in a nutshell, our requirements were from an accurate application inventory and ownership perspective. So we wanted to maintain a complete list of applications with dependencies, relationships, ownerships, and hierarchical mapping, which we refer to as the app map. From a security perspective, we needed to provide application security data for our cyber audits, enabling robust reporting, and we plan to expand this and enhance auditing and data quality governance. The lifecycle and cloud maturity management. So we needed to track application lifecycles, including onboarding applications, active use of the applications, decommissioning of the applications, and monitor cloud maturity to inform strategic planning and architecture roadmaps. The KPIs, the critical KPIs we needed to track. So we needed to monitor key KPIs, including the number of applications in our organization, their cloud maturity at any given point in time, redundancy, obsolescence, and the complete life cycle. And we needed various types of dashboarding views to actually achieve this and view this at a glance. From a cost perspective, expandable solution, we needed to adopt a flexible, cost-effective, and feature-rich tool capable of rapid migration, integration, and extending our use cases. So Esmeralda will expand on this. and she'll take us through the platform and how these use cases were realized.
Okay, so let's expand on some of those reasons why we chose Sparx. Firstly, reducing a number of similar tools. So as Rishen mentioned, they were on the verge of committing to renewal of the existing tool they were using for APM, which was LeanIX. And then thought, we're enterprise architects, do we really need this additional tool? Next was sort of benefiting from a shared platform. Now, we'd already implemented Sparx for them in the past, and this was an opportunity to bring two communities together. So it was the solution architecture team who was using the existing Sparx deployment, and then the enterprise architecture team. And then with both groups having the same view of the application landscape. Saving money, of course, I think this might have been the biggest driver for the change, as with everything else these days. So they thought, we have Sparx already, can it do what we want? Leveraging functionality, once again, they needed a tool which could fulfill their use cases. The main one being to always, as enterprise architects, have an accurate view of their application landscape with all its associated metadata and dependencies. And it seemed the perfect opportunity to explore the APM accelerator offering by Sparx. And then lastly, working with a trusted partner. So as timelines were critical, they needed someone they've worked with before. We've done a Sparx deployment for them before. So it then seemed like a natural progression for them to choose us because of this previous Sparx deployment. So now on to what we've built. So when we refer to Sparx, we always think of Sparx EA. Everyone is probably aware, but Sparx provides much more than just a modeling tool. I'm sure we all agree it does do modeling well. But for this implementation, we concentrated on Prolaborate, which has an APM accelerator offering. And it comes out of the box with the necessary structure and pre-built visualizations, which comes in handy when you don't have a lot of time, believe me. And it offers all the functionality that Vodafone needed to fulfill their requirements, the ones that Rishen mentioned earlier. So rather than us talking about it, let's show you what we've built. So apologies, we only have screenshots. No interactive demos or something similarly glamorous. We thought we'd play it safe by showing something that is guaranteed to work and not break halfway. So let's get to it. So sorry?
Sorry to interrupt, Esmeralda. So
Yes?
Can you please put down the list of attendees from your presentation? It's hiding your presentation.
Sorry, I must put on. You're not seeing my
put
presentation.
on the list of attendees. Yeah, please check the chat box.
Oh, sorry. I get it. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
Apologies.
Thank you.
Is it not taking that away? I'll just put that somewhere else. There we go. Is that better? Apologies for that. So first, we have to mention that Vodafone has an EA SaaS Sparx deployment that is fully hosted in the cloud. They have their own URL, which they use to access the Sparx toolset. We wanted to ensure the user experience was as seamless as possible. And then that, obviously that journey starts from the user logging in. You can see that the Sparx platform is integrated with SSO. You can see the login with SSO button, which is, of course, the master key that unlocks all the goodies inside. Although we do have other clients that don't have SSO and they just obviously log in with normal username and password. So no changes to this screen really from the original Sparx deployment. It was simply a case of making this URL available to the new set of APM users. There. So as I mentioned on the previous slide, the Vodafone EA SaaS platform is hosted in the cloud, and this is the view you'll get, once you sign in. In Vodafone's case, this screen marks a clear boundary in terms of who is accessing Sparx. So on the left, you'll see Sparx EA, which was already present and accessed by the solution architecture team for modeling purposes. Then as part of the APM implementation, we extended this view to include Prolaborate, to be used by the enterprise architecture team for the application portfolio management. And here it is, the finished product, the dashboard. I mean, a well-designed dashboard is a powerful tool for any team. But the main aim for Vodafone was to have a centralized view of key information so they could quickly see the most important metrics and KPIs. You can make the dashboard, of course, as simple or as complicated as you like. And what we are showing here is by no means a definitive list of options available, but only what we've implemented for Vodafone up till now to fulfill their use cases. Starting with a simple tabular visualization of all the applications with their properties and dependencies for those Excel hangers-on, because it does look a lot like Excel, to a roadmap of applications based on the lifecycle properties that was captured for each application, and then to a variety of different charts. Again, this is not a definitive list. There are loads to choose from, but these were the ones that Vodafone felt would best suit their needs at the time. And last but not least, the landscape chart, or the app map hierarchy, as we will be referring to it going forward. It's a lot to take in visually. Don't worry, we will be delving into each of these individually. Additionally, we created these cards along the top. This is not something that Vodafone specifically asked for, but it's a good way of highlighting important metrics. You might want to show how many applications there are, or maybe how many application functions, etc. We just have some examples here. It's not real data. And these cards are basic, but very effective in terms of getting the message across. So as promised, we'll now go into a little bit more detail. Just a heads up, for the purposes of this presentation, we won't be showing you, how to create these reports and the charts to follow. For that, we have the Sparx Prolaborate documentation online, which is very detailed and guides you every step of the way. So as Rishen mentioned earlier, they wanted to see all the Vodafone applications with their properties and relationships in a single list. Hence this detailed report, a single source of truth, so to speak. In the report, this is easy to do in Prolaborate once you've done all the hard work up front. And by hard work, I mean, getting the data into Sparx and capturing all the properties and relationships for each application. In the report, you can show as little or as much information as you want, depending on who's looking at the report. You'll always have the application name, of course, as everything pivots around this. You've noticed we blurred out the names for privacy reasons. Vodafone had a lot of information as well, 46 columns to be exact, and every column represents a property or relationship of the application. This means you need to scroll to the right to see everything, but having this little handy feature right here, sorry, let me just go back to that one, there allows them to see only information they want to see at that time. So you can choose there how many columns you want to see. And as I mentioned before, a lot of information, and we won't go through each of these columns, but we will mention some key ones for Vodafone, like, who is the enterprise architect that owns the application, some lifecycle management properties where you can see the actual state, whether it's active or end of life, and then also the dates that is associated with that status. And this is the data that is used for the roadmap that I'll be showing you a bit later. These columns are also filterable, as this is quite standard practice and a standard requirement to be able to do this. And yeah, what else is there? So you can filter, for example, so Rishen might only want to see, the applications where he's the enterprise architect, and for applications which has an active lifecycle status. And of course, if you want to download, lots of people are still, wanting Excel. If you want to download, you can just click the button there at the top that will download this into an Excel spreadsheet for you handily. Some more information that Vodafone required. So this is just a continuation of the previous slide. I'm showing these as different screenshots, but just, imagine we are actually just scrolling to the right. So Rishen mentioned they needed a view of security data to support cybersecurity audits and reporting. Now, this is their view on security data. You can, of course, also create charts to showcase this information for a more visual effect. But for Vodafone, this view was adequate for phase 1 of their journey. Some more scrolling. Another key piece of information that they wanted to see was the relationships of applications. So they wanted to know which applications preceded the existing ones, i.e. which one is the parent and which one is a successor. And then also high on their list was the ability to track KPIs, as Rishen mentioned earlier. So he mentioned redundancy, cloud maturity, and obsolescence. So here they are in the list view, but we'll also be showing you later what they look like in chart format. So now on to the application lifecycle roadmap. This was also a requirement from Rishen, where they wanted to be able to view, to manage, and to report on the complete application lifecycle. So each application that we just saw in a detailed report has a journey, which we call a life cycle, and think of this as the lifespan of an application, from its initial conception right through to eventual retirement. And the key stages in the life cycle we have identified here were defined by Vodafone. But of course, these are not cast in stone, and every organization will have something different, or just, name them something different. They all hopefully start off with a planning phase, which normally consists of countless meetings and requirement gathering sessions, as I'm sure we're all aware. Next follows the phase in, where you want to gradually introduce this new application. Then after that, the active phase, people are now starting to use this application. But then, as with all things in life, something newer and shinier arrives, and this application has to be now phased out. And then sadly, the final farewell, which is the end of life stage. The application lifecycle is basically, the journey on a page, showing how an organization's applications will evolve over time. Now onto those core KPIs that Rishen needs to track that he mentioned earlier. The first one is cloud maturity. Now, we used a donut chart for this representation, where each of these concentric circles or rings represents a stage of cloud maturity. These stages are outlined in the legend at the top there, once again defined by Vodafone, but totally configurable. As this is a core KPI for Vodafone, they needed to have a view of where their applications are on their cloud journey, whether they are fully cloud native or just beginning the journey. This chart helps them to understand the current capabilities and the limitations of their application portfolio in the cloud. But it's also useful in terms of showing them the existing maturity levels of their applications when they need to consider new cloud-based applications. Another core KPI mentioned is tracking obsolescence. Such a big word, but what does it really mean in terms of applications? In simple terms, it's no longer the best fit for the business need, so it will need to be retired. And what this chart shows, represented by each of the columns or bars, are the different states of obsolescence. It highlights applications that are already obsolete or nearing obsolete stage or don't even have a classification yet. And then having this view allows Vodafone to plan proactively for replacements or upgrades before critical failure occurs. Heads up though, probably should have mentioned this earlier. Before you get alarmed by the large number of no value entries, this is test data. We can't let you let you see all of Vodafone's trade secrets, so we are using test data. But having said this, if you do see this with production data, you'll know immediately where you're lacking in terms of data quality and which areas need to be addressed. So maybe a good thing, not just for this chart, but for all visualizations. And next, KPI that was mentioned was tracking redundancy. Once again, what do we mean by this? It's where a business like Vodafone intentionally and not by accident duplicate critical applications in certain locations to ensure business can continue as usual and prevent downtime. With this view, Vodafone can see how many applications they have locally, how many are regional, and which ones are both local and regional. And this is a critical view to plan for high availability and disaster recovery. And once again, you'll see all the no values there. So no one wants to be redundant, or feel redundant, but in this context, redundancy is valuable and necessary. So the app map hierarchy, as we were talking about earlier, what is this, you may ask? So the name is a bit confusing, but basically this is an application to application function mapping. And this is where you classify applications in terms of what they do. Another critical view for Vodafone, because at its heart, this view is fundamental for application portfolio management. We'll zoom in on a specific mapping to get a better view. So what this basically shows you is, what applications can do, i.e. their functions. And Vodafone has a hierarchy of these. In this view, you can see the level 1, which is the parent, is enterprise applications. And level 2 functions are identity and access management and revenue assurance. And then you can also see the applications themselves. Now you'll notice that these are color-coded. And you can base this color coding on any of the application's properties. But Vodafone elected to have it coded on recommendation. So you can see there's another filter there that you can use to do the color coding on. And then the color coding allows you to see at a glance which applications will be decommissioned or re-platformed, re-engineered, replaced, or sustained. And you can imagine that this view is very helpful in showing those core KPIs we talked about earlier, i.e. obsolescence and redundancies. So Rishen will now provide his inputs to the approach for the APM implementation from a Vodafone standpoint, after which I will give some inputs from our side, Mosaic Island, as the provider of the platform.
Thanks,
over to you, Rishen.
Thanks. So from a project perspective, so I just want to talk very high level on the approach that we took, because we had very limited time to implement this, and we wanted to implement this as quickly as possible to ensure that our data was not stale, because we recognized that if the data was that we kind of exported, if we don't keep that up to date, then it's just more of a task for us to kind of clean up that data. And so from a high level perspective, the approach that we took is, so first we started planning. We identified the most critical tasks to migrate our application inventory into Sparx as soon as possible with our reporting and dashboarding requirements. Okay, so we worked with Mosaic Island to kind of flesh that out as quickly as possible. We already had an investment in the tool, like Esmeralda explained as well, from a solution architect's perspective. So extending the platform for APM capabilities was relatively quick for us. We then had to merge that repository with information we exported from our previous tool with our existing information that we already had configured in the Sparx system. So Esmeralda spoke about that single source of truth. That was very important for us to start with one single repository of information, and then we will be able to build all our reports on that one view. So we needed that unified, consistent single source of applications. And within a short time, including testing time, we were able to create that newly formed merged repository of all of our applications. So we were then ready to implement the critical use cases, which were dashboarding, the KPIs, and this reporting. that Esmeralda took you through. And we wanted it obviously to be in a live environment. So ultimately, the modeling of the use cases, adopting Sparx and using Prolaborate for APM felt like a natural evolution for us, honestly, allowing us to bring enterprise and solution architects together to work on a common representation of the application landscape. Next slide, Esmeralda. I think you can, yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So following on from what Rishen was saying, so the steps we followed as the provider of the platform. So the ask from Vodafone was really, move the application inventory from LeanIX to Sparx. It sounds simple, right? And it was for the most part. We basically used the approach as you see outlined here. This is the standard approach when we work on a Sparx implementation. So first thing, understanding the use cases. Always make sure you understand what the client wants, obviously. I mean, this can be a lengthy process up front, but well worth the effort in the long run. And to get this understanding, you need all the right people in the room. And luckily with Vodafone, all the key stakeholders were on board and engaged as we had a very tight deadline. Step 2, define a meta model. Now, sometimes easier said than done. But if you don't have the building blocks, then you can't finish the house. We will come back to this topic in a subsequent slide as it needs, or the meta model needs a little bit more discussion. Then configuring the system. Once the meta model was defined, you can start building the MDG, or the grown-up name for it, model-driven generation. Another big word, but in simple terms, it's a pre-packaged toolkit that you can add to Sparx EA to customize and simplify the user interface. So, if I can just share a quick comparison. Think of standard Sparx EA as a regular set of Legos, but sometimes you want to build a specific kind of Lego model, like maybe an F1 racing car. For this, you need a special set of Legos, and this special set of Legos is your MDG technology in Sparx. Next was model harvesting, getting the data from where it was to where it needs to be in the correct formats. And we can thank Microsoft for once for achieving this goal for us. Good old Excel to export the data from LeanIX. And then we used a Microsoft Office plugin for Sparx EA that enabled the import of the data. Next thing is establishing governance and workflows. Luckily, these were already established from our previous deployment of Sparx at Vodafone. It was basically just a case of making the new APM users aware of these governance processes and workflows, and creating new user groups with lots of role-based permissions for the new users. Publishing options, we didn't really need to touch on this, as Vodafone didn't require any specialized templates to be built at the time, apart, of course, from the dashboard, which can be published for collaboration with various stakeholders. And last but not least, training. So we provided a detailed user guide with screenshots, a narrative. This covered everything from logging in for the first time, all the different dashboard widgets, to managing the content. So all the steps on how to add, how to update, and how to delete the data in the repository. But going through all of these steps also provided some very valuable lessons, which we will, of course, get to later. But first, as mentioned in the previous slide, a little bit more on the meta model that we mentioned. I'm sure all of you know what a meta model is, but just in case you don't, it's essentially a model of a model. It tells you firstly what to model and how, which elements you need to use, and that certain things can be connected and how they can be connected, and which properties these things can have. Think of it as the grammar and vocabulary of a system. To make our lives easier, Sparx has an out-of-the-box APM meta model that would mostly be fit for purpose. However, there will always be deviations, as is the case for Vodafone. In fact, we've even simplified the out-of-the-box version. They only have a few elements. Firstly, the application, which is always the focus point, as everything else, revolves around the application. Second thing, they have is application functions. Now, as mentioned previously, they've got a hierarchy of them, level 1, 2, and 3 applications, all linked to the actual application. And then they have a provider as well. Now, this is just a placeholder for, it could be suppliers or partners that are important to the business. They can be support or development partners, but they can also be system integrators, so anything you want to use there. And the meta model also defines the types of relationships that are permitted between the various elements. And this is illustrated using the connector elements you see there. So I've mentioned the out-of-the-box meta model and the Vodafone APM model, which we are looking at now, but there was another one from our previous deployment, which was the one for solution architecture, and we won't go into the exact detail of that. But we had to, of course, merge the two so that the solution architecture and the APM enterprise architecture communities, were combined. So it had to be, a key outcome was to have a single repository accessible by both of these teams. So this is the consolidated meta model, where at the top you'll see the APM, and this was to do the bottom part with the existing solution design community. And then also, if you remember from the dashboard I showed you earlier, there was obviously a lot more information on there than just what you're seeing here. And that's where the tagged values come in, or the basic properties of the application. And you can have a whole host of them. As you can see there, that's a list of everything that Vodafone has. And these can be free text fields, or they can be drop-downs with a simple yes, no, or, more complex drop-down options, like, for example, the ones with a lifecycle status that we've mentioned a few times. So yes, in a nutshell, that was your intro to Meta Modeling 101. Now we can move on to those valuable lessons learned. So Rishen can start us off with that.
Yeah, thanks, Esmeralda. So I mean, in hindsight, I think firstly our testing could have been a bit more effective and efficient, as we needed, to conduct rigorous comparisons to ensure that the data was accurate and complete, because, whenever you're merging large sets of data, there's always going to be discrepancies that needs to be ironed out. But from a planning and resource perspective, we needed to move quite quickly. So given our time constraints to achieve this, I mean, overall, we were excited with the end result. I think, if we were starting from scratch, I would definitely say that we could have chosen a particular data model, and a metadata model, and then built everything on that. But I think, if you have a greenfields type of approach, then, you have certain luxuries. But we were trying to align with what we had already in Sparx. But I mean, ultimately, everything worked out quite nicely.
Yes, so I can maybe just add to that. So apologies if I'm repeating anything that Rishen has said, but it's always difficult, well, for me at least, after the fact, to summarize, any lessons learned. But a few to take note of. So we've mentioned MVP before, and we're inclined to use this term loosely, but it needs to be defined. Don't assume that you and the client will always be on the same page in terms of what needs to be included in an MVP. A quote I heard the other day, which was quite apt for this situation, is that one person's nice to have is another person's must have. Second thing to take note of, responsibilities. Make it clear from the start who's responsible for what. Without this, many balls get dropped as you think, oh, someone else must be doing this, so I don't have to worry about it. So get those responsibilities sorted as well. Testing, of course, very important. Make it clear what needs to be tested and by when. Don't just let people loose on the system and say, go and test. Because with that approach, you get an issue list a mile long, and 99.9% of those are not relevant test cases anyway. Another thing to take note of, definition of done. This is a crucial concept, really. maybe not relevant this time around, but worth a mention. It sort of links to the first point we made about agreeing what's included in the MVP. You need to know when a piece of work is finished. And for this phase, we were able to move rapidly because there was a degree of trust between us and Vodafone, because of our long-standing relationship, which is a good thing, but you don't want to test, boundaries with the client. So going forward, we will definitely spend more time on requirements and scope, as we'll have more time, fingers crossed. And there's still a lot to do, which Rishen will take you through now.
Yes. There's always more to do, hey, Esmeralda.
That's true.
There's
good for us, though.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So now we've got a good footprint and a live environment with Prolaborate and Sparx. We are currently planning on expanding our repertoire functionality on Sparx to include more auditing and logging information to get more granular information on who did what, when, whilst using the tool. We'll continue to refine our reporting to make tweaks and enhancements to our evolving needs. That includes, more dashboarding views. Now we've used the tool quite a bit in reporting. We've made some notes or enhancements as we've used it, so that was quite useful for us. And we've definitely identified the need for more data quality checks within the tool to ensure completeness and accuracy. So I think one of the things we wanted to look at is, I was talking about stale information. How do we ensure that the information is kept as real as possible? And we're trying to make sure that the data is being looked at as regularly as possible, and information that's inputted into the system. There's a certain level of checking to make sure that the data quality coming into the repository is as good as we can possibly make it, or as accurate as we can possibly make it. So overall, this functionality will help us to provide more data governance over the application information, with that enhanced monitoring, reporting, and as much interactivity as we can get from the dashboarding and reporting views. Okay, so thank you very much for your time today. I think we've come to the end of the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Bye.